I just can't let you go. Lord knows that I've tried to. You said I was the only one. No one likes being lied to. You made this mess and left me with the pieces. Now I wanna burn all the bridges between us. I can't focus, I can't forget. I've been thinking too much lately. I just need to clear my head. I just need to clear my head. I've been stuck on your memory, but it's not like I need it. And we may have some history, but we don't have to repeat it. You made this mess and left me with the pieces. Now I'm gonna burn all the bridges between us. I can't focus, I can't forget. I've been thinking too much lately. I just need to clear my head. 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 I just need to. I just need to clear my head. I just need to. I just need to clear my head. I just need to. I just need to clear my head. I just need to. I just need to clear my head. I can't focus, I can't forget. I've been thinking too much lately. I just need to clear my head. Oh, clear my head. I just need to clear my head. I just need to clear my head.
Hello everybody and welcome back to the Sunday GT Masters. We are here for round 2 of season 3 here at Twin Ring Motegi, a circuit that doesn't get too much action on iRacing. However, going off round 1, round 2 is going to be just as exciting. We remain in Japan, like I said, here at Motegi. We are on the Grand Prix circuit, 2.983 miles of circuit, or 4.8 kilometers, whichever rate you use. 14 corners for the drivers to negotiate. It's a very busy circuit, and of course we've got to take this time to thank our sponsors as well, Grip Engineering and SIMRACER Coin. We will get a little more in depth with them later on. However, joining me in the commentary box once again, it's an absolute pleasure, Hasse Rømer.
Well, Jack, pleasure is indeed all mine as usual. I've been looking forward to this one greatly. My first race commentating on the Twin Ring itself. Add another ring to it, it would be a kinder egg of surprises. A track that I think not that many drivers are all that familiar with. It's a track that doesn't see all that much action as well. So I think we're in for a good one tonight. And it could be a shake-up from what we saw 3 weeks ago as well at Okayama.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, we saw a little bit of a hiccup with the iRacing incident point system, meaning that Peter Plasto and Nick McLaughlin returned to the pit lane as league admins just to make sure that they can ensure that everybody has a great night's racing. And of course, great sportsmanship to see that they've done that, and they were constantly clearing penalties, making sure that everybody could make it to the end. But they can now retake to the circuit, having resolved the issue, and it's a circuit that's, I believe, in the early hours of dawn at the moment. It's I think it's sunrise on the way. Just looking up at my notes, because we are on an even round number, so rounds 2, 4, 6 and so forth, it's an open setup round, so you can arrive at this circuit with any setup you like as long as it's legal. So we could once again see some drivers slowly work their way through the cracks. Some drivers we didn't see last week, right up at the pointy end of affairs.
Yeah, indeed. To it, is it odd number that are open, or is it even? I don't even remember, Jack. It's my third season of commentating on the Sunday GT Masters. I feel like I should be remembering this by now. I think this might just be even. Yeah, it's it is the even ones indeed. So open setups for tonight. That's gonna be an interesting one. It's certainly gonna be a helping hand to whoever of the drivers will be feeling that the car isn't quite handling to their preferred characteristic, you could say. Track conditions are nice indeed, as we are in the early hours of the morning. 13 minutes past 6 is the sim time, and a track temperature of 18 degrees centigrade, which means it doesn't get much cooler than this in the world of iRacing. And as such, it isn't going to be hard to keep the tires within the optimal working conditions. As Jorge Pinheiro, or Georgie, as we were just touching in upon. What is the correct Portuguese pronunciation of Jorge? And I think it is Jorge, but Georgie it is, if any doubts arise. Jack, we're just a minute away from qualifying here. It's going to be 15 minutes, and that's where it all gets really interesting.
Yeah, so lots to look forward to. The championship having never been to this circuit, we don't have any sort of preference on how quick cars can go around here, drivers to look out for, anything like that. And like you mentioned, Jorge, we're looking at the moment, he's a newcomer to the championship. He's one of the now SR Technic entries. SR Technic, one of the more popular teams. There was lots of interaction in the chat only 2 weeks ago at round 1, so we'll look forward to seeing the fan group arise once again. However, a little more information about the circuit itself. It's previously held Champ Car, the Coca-Cola 500, so NASCAR came here to race on the Twin Ring Oval. Then you've got the IndyCar Series. They come here fairly often between the years of 2003 and 2011. They came every single season. It hosts the Pacific Motorcycle Grand Prix and the World Touring Car Championship, and that's just past events. Current events, there's so many more. So it's clearly a circuit that knows what it's doing. And like you say, with the track conditions working towards the drivers, nice and cool track temp, so it means that they can really start to open the taps. And with it being open setup as well, this can really be whatever you want it to be. If you find a setup that works and you've got perfect track conditions, we are going to see some very, very close times in qualifying. And speaking of qualifying, Hasse, we've just jumped into it.
Absolutely. So we'll see the drivers flowing out on track immediately, I think, to make the most out of the 15 minutes, as per tradition. Just touching upon the fact that we also, of course, have seen Super GT and the what's now called the Super Formula. It was Formula Nippon a few years back, but they, of course, been coming here as a stable hold every season as well. And I think a lot of longtime fans of the Gran Turismo series will be somewhat familiar with the track, at least. as the cones are shamelessly taken out and sprayed all over the place. And one of those tracks, Jack, where I think slipstreaming isn't going to be a huge thing. You could pick up a little bit from the toe indeed, but I don't think it's going to be all that much. But it is it is a track that I think is going to be hard to really get that perfect setup for, because you've got a bunch of slow corners connected by some relatively long straights, and you do have your odd sort of slow mid-speed corner in there as well. So it sort of speaks to a car that wants to have some downforce to be able to take the turns, but at the same time you really want to be able to go fast in a straight line as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a fine balance, and of course with this being a long race as well, it's a 45-minute race. You've got to make sure the setup you make and find is good over a long distance, and it's good over a full fuel run as well. So they've got that to look forward to. Of course, there is potentially the pit stops that the drivers may have to take, whether that be for an incident or they can go in and get some more fuel or tyres. I don't think tyres will be an issue here. Obviously, with it only being 45 minutes, there wouldn't be an issue anyway. But in the cooler temperatures, it means that tyre management should be fairly easy. We're looking at Chris Bolland in the RAF eMotorsports Lamborghini, and I was speaking to him earlier on this week. He's a weapons technician on the Typhoon, the Eurofighter Typhoon aircraft, which is currently operated throughout the RAF, mainly as a quick reaction alert aircraft. He's coming up 19 years service, so of course a massive thank you to Chris Bolland and his family for the time that they can lend to our armed forces. And it's great to see that the RAF, and not only the RAF, like I say, that all of the armed forces are breaking into sim racing. Motorsports has always been a thing within the armed forces community, but after speaking to him, it sounds like sim racing is really the next best thing, because while being in the armed forces is a very big commitment, as long as you can get your hands on a PC and a sim rig, you can just go racing. So it seems like a lot of the current serving personnel in the British Armed Forces and the armed forces all around the world are taking to sim racing, and it's great to see that they can give up and sacrifice a little bit of their time just to suffice as a little bit of entertainment for our evenings, Hasse.
And indeed, I think for anyone who has quick reactions and speed as a part of their job description, of course, now I know we're not necessarily talking about a fighter pilot here, but anyone within the armed forces will have to be able to carry out their designated task with a certain amount of pace and impetus. And I think indeed, I just think that sim racing is one of the best ways to keep the brain sharp as well, and your reactions on and all these things. It'll keep your brain young, and I think for that there are some qualities to it besides the fun. Timothy van der Broek with the first time set here, the first flying lap, a 1:49.83. Alfredo Tricarici second fastest, then Nick McLaughlin just over the 150. Of course, we will have plenty of time as Matty Forrest takes a quick provisional pole banker, about half a tenth of a second up on Nicolas Kokatu and the aforementioned Chris Bolland, but so much more to happen that will be unfolding before your eyes here within the next 10 minutes of qualifying.
Yes, there's still plenty more time of on-track action. The general run-up, not only to their actual race on Sunday with the practice and the qualifying sessions beforehand, they tend to stretch into the week prior. So we do have free practice 1s, 2s and 3s all throughout the week. So free practice 1 is on the Monday before the event, free practice 2 on the Wednesday, and free practice 3 on the Friday. So the drivers have got plenty of time, and all of those sessions are 2 hours long, so they can quite happily go and do a couple of qualifying simulations and then still have time for a full race sim as well. So there's lots of time for drivers to get used to the circuit and racing each other, which I think is just great for the series, because it then means that the racecraft displayed on actual race evenings can be so much better, because everybody has learned who they'll be competing against and how competitive they can be, but also how close they can race with their competitors, and maybe where they can and can't overtake and where they can and can't defend. So there's still lots of little bits which are covered by this championship, which you don't really see anywhere else. And of course, I've got to thank our sponsors, Grip Engineering and SIMRACER Coin. SIMRACER Coin are a cryptocurrency, and they aim to be the leading cryptocurrency in sim racing, so they could be used for sim racing assets like car setup files, paints, even pay for sim racing services like coaching and things like that. So SIMRACER coin is really something to keep an eye out for, and definitely a business of the future. Matthew Forrest maybe not keeping an eye on where he's going, following, I think that's Alfredo Tricarici in towards the barrier, but also grip engineering as well. We already covered grip engineering the week prior, but if you are only just joining us, grip engineering brings experience and methodology, pardon me, from real world championships like the World Rally Championship and Formula E. So directly to your sim rig, so that you'll have all of the same tools that are gifted to real professional drivers, and I think that's just great to see. And even better, Hasse, it's saving money. On your first introductory session, you get 20% discount.
That's all the more reason to dive into it and delve into your own development as well, and the journey as a sim racer. And I think let's put our hands to our hearts out there and be honest with ourselves for a sec here, and just admit the fact that most sim racers are fairly ambitious with their sim racing. And if you are ambitious, there's a few better ways to improve than through the services of grip engineering indeed. And with that said, Jack, Chris Boland has set a very, very competitive qualifying time there. Almost 2.5 tenths up on Matthew Forrest. Seems very spicy, and it's quite close. You'll have to go quite far down the order to find a similar gap. It's not that often we find that between first and second. Now, I know, of course, there's still half a session left for him to put in that perfect lap and tussle Chris Boland off the qualifying throne. But for the minute, it's a provisional pole for the RAF man indeed. Matthew Forrest, our championship leader and defending champion as well in his Lamborghini. It's a car that he'll be knowing quite well by now. Of course, having done an entire season last season in the machine. He crosses the line there. I think that was an outlap, at least no improvements for him being made. And that's still Nicolas Cocato, I think, on his tail as well there, Jack.
Yeah, it is. Good spot. Nicolas Cocato currently sat in provisional P6 for Virtua Racing. These cones are getting a battering. I mean, a massive thank you to the extremely committed marshals. And that's Matt Forrest sideways. A very rare mistake from Matthew Forrest. Puts him backwards in towards the gravel trap and then back towards the pit lane. So like you said, Hasse, our championship leader is not really on championship winning ways at the moment, pointing backwards. Like I say, a very rare mistake from Matthew Forrest. However, thank you for reminding me about the championship. Just as we're at the halfway point, let's rattle through the championship standings. This is the pro class standings at the moment. Like we said, Matthew Forrest leading the way for Virtual Racing Compound Red on 34 points. Martin de Jong for Still There Racing on 29. Then it's Gaston Messeroni rounding out your top three on 24 points. Then it's Chris Boland, Remco Barlow, Rui Felipe, Nuno Vinagre. Then we get back to Bruno Guides, Nicolas Cocato, Chris Roberts, Timothy van der Broek, Cohen Mulder, Valdez Suarez Jr., Eric Luke, Pedro Marimon Cladera, Pete Plasto and Nick McLaughlin. But of course, from 12th place down, there are no points scored. And that is only after one round as well, so they will be getting closer as the championship wears on. I'm going to hand you over to Hasse to rattle you through the AM class standings.
Badly indeed. And leading AM is Savino Melillo with 30 points, 3 points ahead of Stuart Jacklin. Then Matt Sisseler, Sander Kaffa, and Giambattista Giacchetti for Team Gabbiano. Then in 6th, it's Orkun Kulak ahead of Cody Steek, Sean Nicholson, and Craig Thompson, with Matthew Maddox rounding off the top 10. Then Rob the Lobster, indeed, 11th, ahead of Gaston Borre, Emmanuel Lociuli, and EJ Fuellner. We've got Alfredo Tricarici in 15th, ahead of Federico Carli, Sandro Orsini, and Khan Bardak, he's 18th. And Timo Paya is 19th and last of the point scorers. And we've still got Lee Tucker, Nils Cornelis, Dirk Reski, Damian Koper, Ryan Donaher, Stephen Orrell, Chris Pio, Aydin Khan Atterberg, and Ari Sherwood as well. Which brings me to another point that we haven't touched upon tonight here, Jack. But it is a absolutely massive field for tonight. And it's great to see such levels of participation still going, and this series, in fact, still going strong. It's only getting stronger. And another Lamborghini getting loose with the tail in that very same corner. I think it says more about the car than the drivers through there, Jack.
Yeah, it was Emanuele Lucioli, the Italian in the 520 Fast and Age Lamborghini, pointing backwards like you mentioned. So with it being rear engine, potentially maybe a lift off mid-corner or something to unsettle the car, just pitches it sideways, and it's rare to see it once, but to see it twice, it's very quickly becoming a pattern, and we'll have to keep an eye out for that during the race. And the last thing we want, and that's a Ferrari very, very sideways. I think that's Harry Sherwood in the Apex Tech Racing 2 machine. Yes, it is. In towards the wall. I think he kept it out of the barrier after rattling over the grass. But we're seeing the mistakes, which tends to mean the drivers are pushing. So if you're not, if the saying goes, if you're not crashing, you're not trying hard enough. But in qualifying, I guess it is almost necessary. And as you referred to, the grid, 36 drivers in the session at the moment, so that's an immense grid. But we are at quite a sizable circuit, almost 5 kilometres for a full lap. So we've got plenty of circuit to use. But that's going to be a very busy opening stage of the race. 36 cars all trying to work their way through, and another Apex car off the road. That's EJ Fuel now.
I think as well that's something that we haven't really spoken all that much about in the years of commenting that I've done as well. But one of the difficult things with sim racing, or we've spoken about it, but not all that much, or maybe not in connection with this thing in particular. But having been out karting not too long ago, it just made me realize how much information is coming to you when driving, and that of course goes for a machine like this, the GC3s as well, in real life, and just how much of a feel and how good of a feel you get of just where the limit is in terms of what grip is available to you, and how you get the best out of it. Oh, and there's another Lamborghini going around, and our new pole sitter, Jack, Jorge Pinheiro, the Portuguese, up by over 0.2 of a second. By the way, we missed this completely. He goes into the very low 48s. Impressive indeed. But when you're searching for the limits in sim racing, you don't have this feeling. You've got what's coming through your steering wheel. You've got the force feedback. Maybe you might have some base shakers. Maybe if you're really committed and sort of well off as well, you might have acquired some kind of motion rig or something. I haven't tried any of those things. I still don't think it's quite the same as what you get in real life. But, of course, explanations aplenty. It's the final moments of qualifying. Those drivers just making it on to the final lap now. They will have one more attempt before it's race time here at the Twin Ring Motegi.
Yeah, not long left now at all. Drivers making a lot of mistakes, and maybe it's the circuit. Obviously it's cold, so there should be plenty of grip, but I'm not sure whether it would be rubbered in and whether the track conditions carry over through practice and qualifying and the rubber remains on the circuit. You can see the preferred line and the polished surface as well, so I'm not sure 100% why. It's almost like someone spilt oil or coolant out there and the drivers have ran through it and they're all sort of losing grip, or whether they are just pushing so hard to try and find that time. And I guess we're seeing the smaller gaps in the mid-packs and the bigger gaps right up at the top end of affairs. So I've got a feeling the mid-pack battles this race, Hasse, are going to be insane. And not only mid-pack, but we will have the inter-class rivalry between Pro and Am, but also the inter-team rivalry as well, because there's lots of teams out on the grid. For example, Apex Tech have got 4 teams out. Apex Tech Racing 1 through 4. Virtual Racing Compound have got two teams, Virtual Racing Compound Red and Blue, and then of course we've got SR Technic that have been dominating the Pro class. They have been doing really well in this session. For example, pole sitter Jorge Pinheiro up on the top as we just pass the 15-minute mark. Then we've got Nuno Vinagre currently sat there in 4th place, also for SR Technic, down in 10th, Rui Pinheiro. So they're really competitive, and this race is going to be immensely close.
It is. It is. I can see it go in no other direction as well. And I'm really interested to see, Jack, just how well this track lends itself to close racing, especially with the GT3s, because as I think most of us are well aware of, these cars aren't all that affected by the airflow of the car ahead and board sixes and such. They are indeed able to race close, and on a track like this with all the heavy braking zones and slow turns, I think it's going to be very hard to hold your position against someone to close ability and with a car close on pace. And I think we're going to see a lot of great racing as a product of that, as the session is just going through and we're just about to take over. Still a last few couple of cars out there on their laps. Sasso Pros and Ari Sherwood just crossing the line. Let's see if he improves on his final lap. Yeah, he does indeed with a 1:49.693. Here is Sasso Prosen, a Slovene driver, Slovenian I guess it is, but he's 7th at the moment. Coming down into the final sector, this downhill braking zone. And then as it jinks left, a section much harder than you think here. Sasso Prosen throws it into the pit lane. Oh, and hello, Jordan. You'll get to know me as well. and the silly things we come up with in the commentary booth. Sander Kaffa is just about to cross the line as well. And actually, if memory serves me right, Jack, I think Sander is serving as a policeman in the Netherlands as well. Races for Block It Like It's Hot. And here is Ari Sherwood, who was, I think, the last man on track. And with that, the session ticks over, and it's over to Jack Werrell for the grid order.
So Jorge Pinheiro lines up on pole position at 1 minute 48.20, alongside with Chris Boland. Then we have Gaston Messeroni and Nuno Vinagre making up row 2. Row 3 is Matthew Forrest and Pete Plasto of Virtual Racing Compound row 3. Then it's Sasso Prosen and Martin de Jong in 8th. Nicolas Cacato starts in 9th, and Jose School rounds out your top 10 starters. Then we get back to Rui Pinheiro and Chris Roberts. Then it's Cody Steig, pole sitter in the AM class, followed by Sander Kaffa, Cohen Mulder, Timothy van der Broek, Ari Sherwood, Alfredo Tricarici, Savino Melillo, Emmanuel Lucioli, EJ Fuellner, Nick McLaughlin, Chris Pio, Stuart Jacklin, Greg Thompson, Giambattista Giacetti, Robert van den Heuvel, Sandro Orsini, Federico Carli, Sean Nicholson, Damien Coburn, Matthew Maddox, Timo Paya, Matt Sisler, Remco Barlow, and 36 cars later, Stephen Orrell rounds out your grid. So,
36 cars indeed, Jack. It's, as we said before, it's a massive one. Sorry for cutting you off there, but it's just it's gonna be a hectic few opening laps, and drivers are certainly gonna be thrown right into the thick of it. Here is that SR Technic Lamborghini, the Porsche there on row 2, certainly striking machines, Jack. Very, very good looking as well, if you ask me.
yeah, it is a very pretty grid, and you can see its colours of all ranges, and it's not like a team is just set to one car. SR Technic, you can see just in that shot, they've got a Lamborghini and they've got a Porsche out there. Same with Virtual Racing Compound, they've got a Ferrari, a Lamborghini and a Porsche out there as well, among other teams as well. So there's lots of manufacturers out on show, and I've got to say, you will be very proud to see, Hasse, there's not only one Ford GT out this evening, but 2.
Yeah, Chris Pio's back here in his good old Ford GT. It's a tried and tested combination for him. His 3rd season in the legacy machine that it is indeed. And then Martin de Jong, of course, a championship contender last season. He said he wasn't necessarily expecting for that form to continue into this season. It's going to be a bit of a funny, like for the fun season for him. And as a result of that, he's gone with the Ford GT. But of course, any grand result, Jack, in that car is going to be one to remember for anyone involved as they swing in through the right-handers here. It's going to be go, go, go indeed, and it's now led by Jorge Pinheiro.
So I do believe we are now under green flag conditions. Yes, we are. Chris Boland tried to run away around the outside. Jorge Pinheiro didn't punch the throttle, made sure that Chris Boland just dropped out enough, and he does keep the first place position in towards turn 1. VRC teammates side by side, Matt Forrest and Pete Plasto through turns 1 and 2. In the background, everybody else is just trying to work their way through the first sector. Look at the cars just amassing in the background. We can keep on going back, and they still just keep appearing. 36 cars, like we said, all are still going through turn 1. So if we have a look back at the car towards the tail end of the order, so Remco Barlow on the run up towards turn 3. We have a look at our leader, and they're almost heading up towards turn 6 already, Hasse. It's such a big grid. However, now in 3rd place, Gaston Messeroni obviously starting there as well, under pressure from Nuno Vinagre, so that could be 2 SR Technic cars on the podium. Pete Plasto going defensive against Martin de Jong, trying to hold that place on the run up through turn 7 and then through the long left-hander. It's quite a tricky corner. We saw lots of mistakes in qualifying as you've got to brake, turn over a crest. It's so tricky to keep the car planted. However, I think we have had an incident a little further back. Federico Carli, is it all self-inflicted? The car over-rotates in towards the tyres. He bounces back towards the circuit but manages to get the car slowed down, and then it looked like whoever was in, I think, 33rd place at the time, I couldn't quite pick out who it was. Was it Sean Nicholson in the... No, I'm trying to find one of the Apex Tech cars. Matt Sisler, there we go. He has lots of damage on that car, so maybe not the cleanest start to the race, but it's a lot cleaner than, if I'm honest, I was expecting with 36 cars.
Been a lot worse indeed. That is truer than true, but a great start for Pinheiro. Chris Boland and Messeroni there. Matthew Forrest surprisingly in 5th place. He'll be trying to work his way through as the race goes on. And as we tick over to lap 2, it's and I was about to say it's basically 3 Audis at the head of the field here, Jack. There isn't much to differentiate the Lamborghini Huracan GT3 machine from the Audi R8. If you peel off the skin, I know that's not entirely true. They are different indeed, but certainly close relatives, the 2 cars. Got Nuno Vinagre up in 4th place in the SR Technic Porsche 911. Best placed Porsche at the moment as well. The next one would be Jose Skuld, who's in 10th place at the moment for Apex Tech Racing. I wonder what happened to him, because he started a fair bit of way up, and both him and his teammate Cesso Prosen has lost out on a few positions here on the opening lap, but looks like they've both gotten safely off the line. Looks like there was a cent behind from the, it looks like another SR Tech Lambo, and here Cohen Mulder, and that is the Mercedes of Cody Steek going at it as well. Great to see a lot of action here early days, Jack. 45 minutes of racing, of course, and just to touch on the format for anyone who's not in the know, in the knowledge, as they say over there. It is 45 minutes with half a tank full of fuel. That usually lasts the drivers about 30 minutes into the race. And of course, we're going to see a splash and dash for fuel. And as you touched upon in qualifying, Jack, no tires will be taken on that occasion. And Martin de Jong has had a good start, still very close to Pete Plasto ahead. Looks like the Ford GT isn't too far behind here, Jack.
No, fastest lap of the race last time through, 1 minute 49.38. So really piling the pressure on Pete Plasto in front. Up 1 place, like you mentioned, Cesso Prosen in the Apex Tech Racing Lamborghini has dropped back 2 places, meaning that Martin de Jong and the trailing car behind Nicolas Cacato have both gained a position. However, Martin de Jong is after gaining another, and there's, I think that was Matthew Forrest on the exit of the corner, actually pushing Nuno Vinagre. He was that desperate to get off the corner, he decided to drive into the back of the Porsche, very lightly albeit. However, it looks like now we're going to go side by side with the VRC teammates. Matthew Forrest and Pete Plasto trading places on the timing screen. Martin de Jong will have the best seats in the house. He'll be keeping his fingers crossed for contact. We're keeping our fingers crossed that it doesn't get to that. And Pete Plasto finally has to just tuck in behind and allow the position to disappear for a few moments' time. Very close on the brakes was Martin de Jong. He's trying to go all the way around the outside. The front brake disc glowing as he was that desperate to get the car slowed down in towards the hairpin. All this battling has cost him so much time. Nicholas Cacato is now all over his tail, bringing with him Sasso Prosen, trying to make up places after losing them at the start of the race, and it's only going to get closer. So we've got the pit window approaching in around about 10 minutes time. It'll be open for about 20 minutes. So as soon as the drivers can make it to the end, pit window will open. So if they can box, fill their tank and then get to the end, that will class it as open, and then they can stretch the tank as far as they want, and as long as they don't run out, it is in theory still open. And if you've run out of fuel, you definitely know pit window's closed. But Chris Roberts at the moment a little further back, looking to work his way up the inside of Rui Pinheiro. He's all the way up the inside on the brakes, position made on the exit of turn 2, and now can continue and focus forward on the 2 Apex Tech cars up the road. And then we get back to this battle with Martin de Jong. I don't really know where to look. 36 cars, Hasse. There's nothing to pick between them. Let's have a look at our AM class.
Indeed, still led by Sander Kaffer, who had a very good run in qualifying. Also still finds him ahead of a few of the pro cars as well. Here's Craig Thompson, who goes very wide and open the doors for Giambattista Chiacchezzi in the 541 Gabbiano Ferrari. And that was a nice little opportunistic move indeed. Not too many cars carrying damage here early days in the race. Oh, almost. As I say that, Matt Sissler is very late on the brakes. His Mercedes, he's already touched someone. Not really sure what happened to Matt Sissler. We've already seen the damage. Oh, it doesn't seem to be affecting him too bad, but we have had issues, Jack, for both Savino Melillo here and for Cody Steeg as well. Oh, there's a bit of a...
That's on the warm-up lap.
That's on the... Yeah, that's a bit of a checkup, I think you would say, and nothing that Matt could do much about anyways.
Yeah, it's obviously not what you want to see. You're on the warming up lap, so we haven't even gone racing, and there's been an issue. And speaking of issues, Sandro Orsini, that's Stephen Orrell. Let's have a look, see what happened. They collided once, collided again, and the Team Gabino Porsche out towards the gravel trap to try and retake to the circuit as safely as possible. Savino Melillo has had an issue, so he's already got damage aboard that car. Round and under the bridge he goes, and that car is destined for retirement. He's pulled straight in towards the gravel trap and then straight back towards the pit lane. But another incident, Federico Carli, what has happened here? Leaving the pit lane with still damage on that car. I think maybe he forgot to tick the fast repair, but he's just sat waiting patiently. No, he's very, very patient, just allowing everybody to work their way through. Nice and considerate, it has got to be said. And I've got to say, the one thing we have in bucket loads here at the Sunday GT Masters Championship is sportsmanlike driving, Hasse.
Yeah, it's a very gentlemanlike series, and I think that reflects on some of the decisions that are being taken. Of course, we do have racing and we do have incidents as well from time to time, but it's just also a lot of drivers taking decisions, as we just saw there, knowing that, okay, my car is damaged, I'm not going to be anywhere near competitive before I get this fixed, so there wasn't really any reason to get in the way of those who are still duking it out. And I think a lot of drivers are going to be appreciative of such displays of sportsmanship indeed, Jack. Here, Pinheiro still leading, still defending from Chris Boland. Maceroni, the Argentine Audi driver, in third there, just biding his time. And for someone sitting that close, they could be all out, but it looks to me like some of the cars behind are having that little bit extra in reserve, and maybe a race setup that's a bit more efficient than the qualifying setup they were on there. I think Pinheiro might have gone a little bit wide there. Here goes Timothy Vanderbroek for 14th place, and that's on the Ferrari of AM leader Sander Kaffer.
It's getting very close up at the top end of affairs as well. You can see Jorge Pinheiro still leading the way in the background. That's Nuno Vinagre under pressure from Matt Forrest. He's looking all the way around the outside. Can he make that work? Pinches him towards the apex. If he can get on the throttle, a big kick of oversteer from Nuno, and that does mean Matthew Forrest has gone around the outside, and now it's Peter Plasto looking up the inside. So it could be 2 for the price of 1 here, and going with them is Martin de Jong. So 2 VRC cars managed to work their way through all the way around the outside. Gives it a go, Martin de Jong, and then a little bit of contact on the exit as the cars went over the crest. Nuno Vinagre lost 4 places, almost 5 in the space of, what, 3 corners? It will be 5, yeah. And then all the way around the outside.
6, actually.
Yes. Yeah, he's just dropping positions, and obviously that will throw him out of his rhythm, and rhythm in an endurance race is so important for consistency.
Yeah, and it's once you get thrown off like that, it's just so hard not to push too hard and either collide with one of the cars you're battling with, just out of pure desperation of keeping track position. But I actually think it was pretty well dealt with by Vinagre there, who's now down in 9th place. And Chris Boland, Chris Boland has gone into the lead as well here, Jack. So just what has happened? Some flashing from the car behind. Boland up the inside. Pinheiro gives plenty of space. This is coming around the final corner, I believe. Or was it the final corner of the other track?
Yes,
which is
I think that was up
indeed
at the hairpin.
super confusing.
Yeah, so if
down towards the
yeah, right up at the top of that hairpin. I see what you mean. I thought exactly the same and got confused, and I thought, well, the final corner isn't a hairpin, but there it is. So yeah, finally figured out where he was, and you've got to think he's only just got by, and he's already building that gap, Hasse.
Yeah, but he was really piling on the pressure as well, and just looked to me like he had that little bit of extra pace in the Lamborghini of his compared to the identical machine, but there's no guarantees. I think chances are they'll be on wildly differing setups, and for that alone, that's could be a bit of the advantage, at least, of Chris Boland. Seems to be on a very good stride for now. Still interested to see what Gaston Mazzaroni has in that Audi of his. And then, of course, we know defending champion Matthew Forrest, there in 4th place. He's, what, just under 2 seconds down the road as well. So it's all there to play for. It's very close, very open, also closer than you would usually see here about 12, 13 minutes into a race, where often is beginning to settle down in terms of the immediate battle for position. But in this one, Jack, not a chance.
No, not quite as yet, and you can see Matthew Forrest, after maybe not being quite as competitive in qualifying as we expected, in the race, having made up that position on Nuno Vinagre just a few laps ago, he's slowly starting to pile that pressure on towards the top 3. Pete Plasto, while he is a teammate, it's almost like the sister team, so it's almost Red Bull and AlphaTauri. It's Team Red versus Team Blue, so he could play rear gunner and prevent any cars from behind breaking through and applying pressure to Matthew Forrest. So he could just focus forward, forget about that rear view mirror, and just really start pushing for those podium places. At this stage in the race, I don't think it's worth it, but if he can keep that pressure on, he might just be able to force a mistake. Here you can see now EJ Fuellner tucked in behind the Lamborghini of Emanuele Lucioli, and then through the double left-hander we go. We've seen lots of mistakes from rear-engine cars, and like you say, the DNA of the Audi and the Lamborghini very, very similar, so you'd imagine if the Lamborghinis were getting caught out in qualifying, so too would the Audis, but that could all could be to do with setup, as it's open setup around here at Twin Ring Motegi. Under the bridge they go, so that is the oval. There is an oval here at Twin Ring Motegi as well. Up the hill they go, through the S's, and they've slowly started to open up once again. And that lead, what is, I think now a quartet, there's 4 cars all there, just nose to tail. There's nothing to pick between them.
And I think if Plasto can get on the tail of it as well, he's not going to be spending too much time, I think, looking back at Martin de Jong for the sake of his teammate ahead. At least when casting my mind back to the battles they had for the championship last season, there was no love lost between the two. And it was a great show indeed, season long, with Martin de Jong indeed as a joker as well, who played a grand part throughout Season 2. So I'd expect Pete Plastow to take any chance that it would arise from up in front here as Gaston Messeroni goes towards the inside of the Lamborghini. Breaks that tad bit later, and Pinheiro looks like he's driving in a very mature way here. He isn't taking or picking every battle that he can there as he just places himself on the outside, tries for the cutback and gets a little bit of a push from Matthew Forrest. But I think it wasn't enough to really cause any damage. I would believe that would have been a 0x contact rated here. Pinheiro really pushing now, though, to try and get back on the Audi up ahead. That was a nice move from Messeroni. Here goes Matthew Forrest up the inside. Oh, a nice driving from both of them. Pinheiro showing some great awareness. All the battling there has brought Pete Plastow right back into the mix here. It's not going to take long for Martin de Jong to be there as well. Around the outside again for Matthew Forrest. And that was a great one, Jack.
Yeah,
Brilliant move.
It was indeed. Very impressive stuff. And now we've got, by the looks of it, Martin de Jong Peter Plastow, pardon me, having a look up the inside of Jorge Pinheiro, but not wanting to lose too much time as Martin de Jong is just sat behind. And then we've got a battle a little bit further back, right into the AM class. This is Giambattista Giacetti versus Emanuele Lucioli. Emanuele managed to almost hold it around the outside, but the better drive off the corner went to Giambattista. And then we have a look back up towards the battle for the final step on the podium in theory, because Matthew Forrest just up the road trying to run away from Jorge Pinheiro. Then it's Peter Plastow and Martin de Jong, and then we can finally get back to a bit of breathing room, which is Nicolas Cacato, but he doesn't have too much to spare because Sasso Prosen and Nuno Vinagre are there. And then after a little bit of a jump, we get back to Jose Sculj and Rui Pinheiro. Cohen Mulder has got Timothy van der Broek all over his tail. Sander Kaffer somewhat safe in the lead of the AM class, because somewhat safe in this race seems to be if you've got anything over a second. But then back to the battle for the final step on the podium, Hasse. It's still all nose to tail. This time with Peter Plastow still in front of Martin de Jong, but falling away from the duo in front.
Yeah, and I was just about to say the only two real winners of all that battling, of course, Matthew Forrest really gaining some positions here over the last few laps, and that's going to be all well and great for him. But Chris Boland and Gaston Messeroni, though. So, oh, and Messeroni, the curse of the commentator strikes again as he just about loses contact with the rear end of his car in the final sector. And that is not even the final sector. That's coming into the hairpin of not the start-finish straight. That is the start-finish straight of the West Circuit, I believe. Yeah, of course, because it's sort of westernly located here. Messeroni is going to have a hard time defending this one. He's going to be on the outside, and he's going to be well and good there. But a slight misstep from the Argentine. That's left Chris Boland way ahead here. Pete Plastow with a relatively early pit stop. Maybe just to avoid all of the battling that's going on here. And that could be a very, very smart decision in the end here, as Matthew Forrest takes another position and gets himself up into second there, Jack. Oh, and Matthew Forrest has gone off. As I was trying to figure out why I wasn't hearing Jack at the other end of it. And Messeroni's in trouble as well.
I think, sorry about that, I realised that I'd accidentally leant on my mic and muted it. I think Messeroni is waiting for Matthew Forrest, and we did mention sportsmanship, and that is just even better to see, whilst of course they have now all lost a raft of positions. It's not like Gaston Messeroni is the big winner. He has sacrificed his race as he has damaged somebody else's, but yeah, contact between Matthew Forrest and Messeroni. I saw it as soon as they hit the brakes. Matthew Forrest braking at his usual point, but Messeroni maybe not taking into account all of that extra speed he will have had after being tucked underneath the rear wing and getting lots of draft assistance. We've had an incident for Sean Nicholson a little further back. Can't quite pick out where he is as of yet. I'm sure we'll be able to have a look back to see what happened. But at the moment, Matthew Forrest right the way down in 11th, Gaston Maceroni in 12th, having gone from 2nd and 3rd. They are now just on the very edge of the Pro Class, but then back up towards this battle. It's not got any further apart. Almost contact once again. Nicholas Cacato moving over very slightly on Sasso Prosen. And I don't know what we're going to do here, Hasse. It's all going to come down to pit stops.
Yeah, I think so as well. But it would be interesting to see the contact between Forrest and Maceroni again, if possible, of course. And I think there we go. Yeah, a bit of a jerk there. And I think he was in two minds whether he was going to try and overtake or not. Sometimes that's kind of the worst thing you can do. And Matthew Forrest, I'm afraid he isn't going to be too happy about that. Of course, it is the best sportsmanship you can show to wait up as his teammate Nicolas Cucato now into 4th place on the tail of Martin de Jong in the 4GT. Yet another race of Martin de Jong just letting the race come to him. He's now putting the pressure onto Pinheiro. Oh, there's a late deep send from, I think, yeah, that's Matthew Maddox against the vegan Mercedes of Stephen Orrell. Then Chris Roberts on the tail of this, who will be hoping to pick up some positions, but he's already had a pit stop as well, Chris Roberts. So as they come in, they will, well, he'll be finding himself crawling up through the order here. Cucato now really putting on the pressure, and Martin de Jong having to defend. I think he'll be happy that there's a bit of slipstream ahead of him. Still a tightly wound group, this one. Matthew Forrest trying to fight his way through the pack. Oh, there's a switcheroo. Let's go up the inside of Timothy van der Broek.
Yeah, Maceroni, once again, very, very deep on the brakes. Whether he's having some sort of hardware issue and he can't get the brake pressure he requires, but that's a couple of times we've seen him go quite deep on the brakes. The first time, obviously, in towards the tail end of Matthew Forrest, and we've just seen it again. So we'll have to keep an eye out on that as the race gets older. SR Technic, like we said, dominating this part of the race. You can see Jorge Pinheiro currently sat there in 2nd place. Then it's Nuno Vinagre in 5th, and Rui Pinheiro down in 7th. And I've just had a look. Of course, we did have Matthew Forrest and Gaston Maceroni 2nd and 3rd. We completely forgot to look. Chris Boland still in the lead, 6.1 seconds clear now. The race has really come to him, and after a fairly competitive point scoring round last time out, this will really help his championship efforts. It will be very close at the top end of the Pro Class if everything remains as is, but of course we're only 23 minutes into the race, so we've still got around about 20 minutes to go, including pit stops as well, Hasse, so this race is far from over. Gaston Maceroni and Matthew Forrest back battling once again.
We're still going at it. Now just with Timothy van der Broek in there as well. Fighting to crawl up through the top 10. You gotta wonder, Chris Boland there, he's really in a good state, and I think he's well, he's been in a perfect position to take advantage of all the fighting that's gone down behind, but he was also strong enough and quick enough to be able to stretch out that advantage, which in turn caused everyone to scrap and to really get desperate because they wanted to try and see if they could follow him. So in a way, he's been the one to really put the pressure on the rest of the bunch here tonight, and it's a pressure you've been able to feel, I think, here as Matthew Forrest goes into the pits for his pit stops. 24 minutes into the race, Martin de Jong still stays out. I reckon Martin thinks his lap times are still okay. Pinheiro, I think, just set the fastest lap of the race so far. That's a 1:49.36. And that says something about the tires as well here, Jack, because if that's possible 25 minutes into a stint, then the tires haven't been stretched that far yet, and I think we'll see tires that are working pretty well at the later stages of the race as well.
Yeah, and this will be at the point where the car is almost as light as it will be, because obviously with the half fuel tank, he is getting very close towards that 30-minute mark where the fuel will start to run out. And of course, with fairly young tyres, like you say, only 14 laps old, there's nothing too much to shout about in regards to tyre wear at that stage. And with the fuel almost empty, you're going to have a very quick car, and the Lamborghini seems to be the most competitive car at the moment. Not only overall, but in classes as well. It seems like the Lamborghini can work its way towards the top end of affairs. We've got 3 Porsches a little further back. This is in the AM class and just slightly mixing into the pros. Robert van den Heuvel the first for Still There Racing Team. Chris Roberts is about to become the second for Virtual Racing Compound Red after fighting to get past Matthew Maddox. But we will have another look back up towards the top end of affairs. Everybody's still very equidistantly spread. Jorge Pinheiro, will he go in towards the pit lane this time by? No, he won't. What about Martin de Jong, Nicolas Cacato, and Nuno Vinagre all agreeing to stay out. So too is Jose Sculj and Rui Pinheiro just about following him through the final corner without crashing into him. Then we have Matthew Maddox and Chris Roberts still nose to tail, and you can see Matthew Forrest after retaking to the circuit after his first pit stop, hopefully his last pit stop as well, right the way down in 21st place, still 15th in class, but he's got all this traffic to work through. Most of it will be peeling off into the pit lane in the coming laps, but for the moment he can just wait, really.
Yeah, and I think, a little bit of a moment there for Matthew Forrest. If you come in and early and traffic's gonna be like this when you come out, that's not gonna aid your process much, I think, here. Sculj and Pinheiro, and that's Rui Pinheiro, and I believe they're brothers, but I've made the assumption that 2 people with the same name were brothers, and I then later found out that there was a father and son racing together. So you can never make assumptions, Jack, just saying. Here's Pete Plasto, by the way, who's in 15th place at the moment. He did that early pit stop as well in the 312 Ferrari. Just wondering if that's gonna work out for him in the end, because he's also having to weave his way through on some of these slightly slower cars that have yet to pit. 27 minutes, so we'd expect them to be able to run for maybe a lap more, and that'll be about it. That's a very nice graphic, and one that I haven't actually seen before at SDK, Jack, indicating the pit stop laps for the cars that are running. Pete Plastow, early stopper there on lap 10, but also first on track of the cars that have had their pit stops done. So we'll have to see when the rest of the bunch comes in. Pinheiro about a 10th up, by the way, Jack, on the leading Chris Boland on that last lap there.
Yeah, so slowly starting to reel him in as well, which is, of course, really good towards the end of the race. 6.5 seconds the lead gap between himself and Pinheiro. Boland up at the front. And yeah, I've got to say, I found that graphic and I love it. It shows you not also the laps, but also where people work out if you're half in and half out of a pit window, whereabouts they'll feed into each other. So you can see Pete Plasto and Sasso Prosen behind have both pitted, so you know if after all is said and done, they are fighting for position. It's not like one of the drivers still has to pit. No, they are fighting for places. So too Chris Roberts and Matthew Forrest, the VRC teammates. I'm sure they're in contact with each other, but they are fighting for an overall position as well, because they've both been into the pit lane and they can run like this till the end of the race. So it's such a handy little graphic that we've found. Martin de Jong currently sat there in 3rd place under pressure from Nicolas Cacato, but heading in towards the closing stages of the pit window, you'd expect to see either this lap or the one following to make the pit lane incredibly busy, and still with the top 13 drivers to pit, Hasse, I've got a feeling we might see a few mistakes in towards the pit lane, like missing pit boxes, braking too late, braking too early, little things like that. So it's a massive turning point in the race we're approaching.
Yeah, that's actually quite true as well. Pete Plastow here, he's 37 seconds down as the leaders are indeed coming into the pit lane. Cucato tries for the extra lap, tries for the overcut here. And whether that's going to work out or not, well, we'll have to see. Everybody else coming into the pit lane Oh, and almost contact there on
Oh.
the apex of turn 1. I think that was why he was flashing. I didn't quite understand. Maybe he was watching the stream or something. Makes a bit better sense now, I think. Anyways, I'm interested to see just where Pete Plastow is going to be with this. 37 seconds. Considering, you look at this, he's not too far off, is he? I think he's going to rejoin in 4th after all of these stops, which is not too shabby at all.
No, you've got to think as well, Nicholas Cacato, at the start of the race, he was following Chris Boland in the lead and then following, I think it was Jorge Pinheiro in 2nd place. So he had 2 cars in front of him, 2 Lamborghinis, where he could just sit in the draft, save fuel, lift and coast if he had to, change up early, and that has now allowed him to gain that extra lap's worth of fuel and continue forward. And you never know, all this clean air has, so that could allow him to gain a little bit of time. No pressure from behind, no pressure about overtaking in front, and that then means that potentially that time saved could mean a position.
Yeah, but that was even Gaston Maceroni, I think, because Cucato was sitting just a bit further down in like 6th,
Oh, yes, of course.
7th place for quite a while until we had that incident, and he's been coming up, crawling through. But that just speaks for the case, maybe even even clearer, that he's been fuel saving and just holding off, just making sure he had enough to do that extra lap that he's just done, and we'll now see where he comes out after his pit stop. I think he is the final car that is yet to pit. We've been racing for 31 and just about half a minute. That means we've got just under 15 minutes still to race here. The 2nd round of the 3rd season of the Sunday GT Masters. And Chris Boland looking to take the lead again. Martin Young is ahead of Pete Plastow. And that probably means Cucato's coming out now, so we'll see where he is. There he is. Cucato's out in 2nd place. Brilliant done by the Virtua Racing driver in the Audi. And currently, Martin de Jong's on for another podium finish in the Ford GT. And if he can keep it like that, I think he will be a happy Dutchman indeed.
Yeah, I think that will stand him in very good stead in regards to championship points after the podium the last time out, and potentially, I don't want to speak too soon, potentially another podium here. Jorge Pinheiro keeping Peter Plastow busy behind, so it could all swing the way, one or the other. We don't quite know as of yet. Sasso Prosen and Nuno Vinagre just sat behind, as well as Jose Sculge. Then Rui Pinheiro, Gaston Maceroni a little bit further back, Cohen Mulder not too far adrift, and Chris Roberts on the outside of that one. 12th place in class, 12th place overall. Cody Steig now leading the AM class, with Nick McLaughlin, one of the pro drivers, trying to work his way through the order. Timothy van der Broek a little bit further back. And then we get back into in towards all of the AM drivers. However, the AM drivers, I've got to say, been very well behaved, and there's not too much going on in the way of a battle. It's all kicking off in this battle up at the front of the pro class.
Yeah, just like last season, Jack. It's brilliant to see indeed. Not so brilliant to see, though, that Matthew Forrest seems to me that he's stationary. He's out of the race, I think, and I'm trying to figure out what happened to him.
I think this may have potentially been not the oval. So this was the original incident that we saw, so that definitely wasn't it. Bear with me, Hasse, I'm sure I'll find it. I will get back to you once we've got it.
Yeah, indeed, because it would just be interesting to try and find out what it was. Might have been a disconnect, actually. I don't see anything. Really? It's in the pits. That's a long time ago. And I see no incidents for him in the timing or the event viewer as well. So, for all I know, that could have been a disconnect.
Yeah, so the last thing we saw from Matthew Forrest was this overtake between himself and his teammates, and I think on this lap he went into the pits as well. Oh, there was contact between himself and Chris Roberts, and I've got a feeling he has been disqualified, Hasse, because as soon as that hit happened, he disappeared from the timing and then was no longer allowed to enter the race. Of course, Just a few laps before, he had had contact with another car, so that will have been incident points. So 4 for the incident, 1 for the off-track, 2 maybe for the loss of control, 4 more for an incident with his teammate Hasse. I think that is an incident point infringement, and that has got him disqualified.
That could be it for the reigning champ. Round 2 here. That is an absolute disaster for his hopes and chances of keeping the title fight alive. And it's going to really help opening it up here at round 2. And it's what we've seen over the last few seasons of the Sunday GT Masters as well, is that most often it's the driver who does best at Alan Prosting this season, I was about to say, who goes on to win the title, because you really need to make sure that you're there every single time to pick up the point. That's a bit of a mistake from De Jong, who goes in too quickly, gets slightly wide on turns 1 and 2, but doesn't quite open himself up to a real attack there from Pete Plastow. Of course, the points system has been changed to give a little bit extra towards the winner to this season, and we'll see if it makes a difference to just how it turns out. But brilliant to see the racing still going strong here within the final 10 minutes of the race here, Jack.
Yeah, so not long left remaining, like you say, just under 10 minutes of the race, and I've got to say, the battle for second all throughout tonight has just been the closest we've seen, I think, not only this season but in previous seasons as well. They've just been nose to tail for 35 minutes. There's nothing that has thrown the drivers off, really. We've seen a range of different drivers. We've seen incidents, and we've seen then other drivers come in and replace those ones that have returned to the pit lane to take repairs, and the ones that have maybe been disqualified from the session, not mentioning any names. So it's just been so close and so unpredictable. And now we're seeing Pete Plastow mount to challenge for the final step on the podium on a run down the hill, break earlier than you think you have to, even more so when you're in the draft, and then throw the car over onto the apex and use the compression to help the car turn in. Under the bridge we go, and then in through the final corner. The lead gap is still coming down, 5.7 seconds as they cross the line. In regards to lap times, what are we seeing between the pair of them? A 1:49.70, a 1:49.84. So that time out, the lead gap will have opened up between Chris Boland and Nicholas Cacato. Martin de Jong still under intense pressure from Peter Plastow, and I've got to say, Hasse, the complexion of this battle surely means we're going to see a change of position in the coming laps.
It'll have to happen. If nothing else, it'll be coming from behind as Martin de Jong will be blocking him off. Seems like the Ford GT might have been a little rougher on the tires than the rest of the bunch here. Oh, and is that Cucato has been slowed down massively all of a sudden as well. And all of a sudden he finds Martin de Jong right on his tail. A fair bit of traffic to navigate over these few laps as well, and that's gonna be an extra thing to throw in the mix. So we've had a bit of an issue, I'm afraid, for EJ Fuellner, just losing the rear end of his Audi. And then going on to the grass. Still more battling here as we're watching Cucato, De Jong, Plastow. That's Jorge Pinheiro and Sasso Prosen. Now, remember, Pinheiro and Prosen, both of those drivers in their debut races in the series, mind you. It won't be their first time racing in iRacing, I can tell you that much, that's certain. But nice to see the new heads coming into play as well at their very first showing here. So we're with the bumper, or we're with Pete Plastow on the bumper of Pete Plastow's car, I'd like to say. Before I say something that could be misunderstood, which shouldn't be the first time in honest, coming into turn 1, and it's a tricky one indeed, because you want to get that apex, then draft out wide, and then not too wide though, because that's going to ruin your exit. And it's one of those turns that really takes a toll on the left-hand side, especially the front tire, I would think. Really suffers through there.
Got to say, Hasse, it's it's almost bringing a tear to my eye how condensed this traffic is. Look at it, it's all so uniform as well. It just looks like a proper race, and it's great to see the drivers are having this much fun in the Sunday GT Masters League. Of course, sponsored by SIMRACER Coin and Grip Engineering. Wouldn't be able to do it without them. Nicholas Cacato desperately trying to get past some traffic. That's is that Sean Nicholson? No, I can't quite pick out who that is. So Nicholas Cacato, contact between himself, Martin de Jong, Peter Plasto, and I think Jorge Pinheiro as well, all caught up in that. We've got to have a look back to see what happened there.
Yeah, absolutely. And Cucato just wanting to get past on the Gabbiano Porsche. Oh, and it's really caused a bit of a calamity there, and I'm surprised to see there wasn't more of a effect from it in the end in terms of position. But in terms of damage to the cars, what will have happened there? Cucato's come past up through again. What has happened to Martin de Jong? He's out! Martin de Jong is out of the race as well. At such a late stage, and there's Pete Plasto's in trouble. Oh my word! And less than 5 minutes to go of the race here. This is incredible.
Yeah, so there was yet further contact, I think, a little later on. And Nicholas Cacato, Martin de Jong, and Peter Plasto hard into the wall. I think Martin de Jong, yet another disqualification. The tracking is all out, so that'll be toe links on both sides, I think, of that Ferrari that has sent it a little bit haywire and in towards the pit lane. The big winner out of all of this, Sasso Prosen, that has massively thrust him up towards the podium places. And then we get back to 3 SR Technic cars, Jorge Pinheiro, Nuno Vinagre and Rui Pinheiro as well. A big look up the inside there from Jorge, trying to get on towards the podium. A purple Sector 2 that time through from Chris Boland. Of course, he won't really know what's gone on behind him, apart from all of the names jumping around on the relative delta box in the bottom right corner, or wherever you choose to have it. So he will just see the names swapping around, and that gap behind getting bigger and bigger. Nicholas Cacato surely carrying damage. You can see visually there's bumps and scrapes on that car, so he will know he'll be a couple of cards out of hand in regards to Sasso Prosen, who is in a very clean Lamborghini. You can see the car bouncing over the curbs and over the crest, and all the undulation changes now affecting that Audi in second place. And who would have thought, Hasse, with 3 minutes of the race remaining, the race would still be this close, albeit with completely different drivers.
Yeah, and the entire top 3 of last season all eliminated from this race. That is a lot of drama indeed in the end here, and something I did not expect to see at the very least. And here comes a look up the inside from Prosen, who gets touched up the rear, and he's gonna keep it just about under control. Sasso Prosen almost loses it there. And I'm not quite sure they actually touched, but if they didn't, there was not much more than a piece of paper's width in between them there. Sasso Prosen, and that was Jorge Pinheiro, of course, the Portuguese. The 2 Lambo newcomers duking it out for that final podium step. Obviously, Prosen wants more than that as well. The only one who looks sort of safe in all of this is Chris Boland, who's almost 10 seconds up the road. With all the chaos that we've seen in behind here, Nuno Vinagre in that completely clean Porsche 911 is in 5th place as well. And with more traffic coming up, don't rule him out yet though, because we've seen here, Jack, over the last few minutes that things can indeed turn ugly very, very quickly indeed. And for the trio of main protagonists from last season, it just did, and for all 3 of them. And what a turnout it's been so far this race. It's been a great one to watch, again.
Yeah, absolutely. It seems like this championship, you just can't really put a handle down on what's going to happen. Of course, previous seasons have been much the same, but this season I think even more so, as like we say, we're at round 2 of season 3 of this championship, so it's only going to get closer, it's only going to get better, so you'll have to stay with us over the 10-round season we are part of, and with drivers slowly getting used to each other and each other's driving standards and styles, it's allowing each other to race even closer. I think Matthew Forrest is in the chat on the Virtual Racing Compound account, and he's saying he got DQ'd, so maybe not the happiest chappy at the moment in that in the Lamborghini. So he is just sat into the pit lane. But on towards the final lap, Chris Boland, and he's, as far as he's aware, he's just driven faster than everybody else. He's been sat at the front, nothing's happened. He's going to watch this stream back, and I'm sure it'll take him a couple of hours to lift his jaw off the floor because it has been an immense race he has missed.
And I think, Jack, in the end, he will be relatively happy not having too much of a part in what's been going on in behind. But it's it must be a big boost of confidence as well for Chris Boland in terms of the rest of the season as well. He's writing himself in there as a main championship contender with this sort of form. And we'll see if it's something he can muster in as well for himself with the fixed setup when we get to that. Sasso Prosen still trying to find a way past on Nicolas Cucato. And the virtual racing driver is doing a good job so far. He is carrying a bit of damage on his Audi. Not quite sure just how much is costing him. But it's getting close to last chance as well. Prosen knows this, and it's gonna be at the downhill braking zone at the end of this straight. Weaving going on already here. Is it gonna be a move here, Jack? What do you think?
I want to say yes, but I also don't want to see any incidents, so he's decided this time to hold out on that. But coming through the final corner for the final time here at Twin Ring Motegi is Chris Boland to take the win here for round 2. Great drive from Chris Boland, who's going to take the second step off the podium. It is Nicolas Cucato. Sasso Prosen on his debut will take to the third step of the podium. Great stuff. I'm over the moon to see such a strong debut. Then we get back to an SR Technic trio, 4th, 5th and 6th. Jorge Pinheiro, Nuno Vinagre and then Rui Pinheiro. And then once again on his debut, Jose Sculj for Apex Tech Racing 4 finishes in 7th place. Cody Stye coming through the final corner now, once again for the final time. This is going to be our AM class winner. Fairly sedate race in the AM class, and I've got to say it has been a dominating victory. 14 seconds to the clear for Cody Stye. Giambattista Giacetti is coming towards the line to finish in 2nd place, hounded all the way by Craig Thompson, who has got Chris Pio, the second of the 4 GTs, all over his tail. So this is when we start to see the AM class get closer on the final lap, coming through the final corner. But that does mean that Giambattista Giacetti will finish in 14th. Craig Thompson 15th, and Chris Pio 16th, but 4th in class.
Yeah, indeed, and with 36 starters, and it looks to me like... So I'm just gonna see how many of them did the... 7 cars that didn't make it to the finish. 7. As it looks. So, maybe not as, well, I was about to say not as atrocious as we would expect, maybe. But then again, to the drivers involved in the incident, so to those who haven't made the checkered flag, it would be disrespectful to talk about the race not being atrocious. It has actually been relatively atrocious. And it's been a tough one indeed here, as we're going to be served to a few highlights, I think. No, that's the race results. Indeed, in pro here, Chris Boland, as you said before, Jack, what a brilliant win. His first win in the Sunday GT Masters. He takes it ahead of Nicolas Cucato and Sasso Prosen. That rounds off the pro and overall podium as well. Jorge Pinheiro, Nuno Vinagre, and Rui Pinheiro. It's Portuguese 4, 5, 6. For SR Technique, then Jose Skul, Gaston Mezzaroni, Cohen Mulder, and Chris Roberts rounding off the pro top 10. We got Timothy van der Broek, Nick McLaughlin, Remco Barlow, Pete Plastow, Martin de Jong, and Matthew Forrest. And noting that's the 1, 2, 3 from last season. At the very bottom, they're not finishing. They will not be happy about that at all.
No, they will not. It's such a shame, but that is just part of motorsport and it's part of racing as well, and it's just something we've got to deal with. However, as we now are on the AM results, Cody Stye takes the win, followed by Giambattista Giacetti for Team Gabino in 2nd place. Craig Thompson finishes in 3rd and rounds out your podium. Then it's Chris Pio and Robert van den Heuvel in 5th. Then we get back to Stephen Orrell, Matthew Maddox, Alfredo Tricarici, Sander Kaffer, Sean Nicholson, Harry Sherwood, EJ Fjellner, Matt Sisseler, Timo Paya, Sandro Orsini, Stuart Jacqueline, Emmanuel Lucioli, and Damien Kober in 18th place. We can go down a few further rows. We get Savino Melillo and Federico Carli not completing the first lap of the race. But that is your AM class results, and I'm sure we will have a few interviews in a second.
Interviews we shall have in a second. Well, it was going to be a bit more than a second anyway. We've got Chris Boland, Jack. And why don't you bring him in and have a word with him? I'd like to hear what he's got to say about this race here.
Yeah, so Chris Boland, welcome to the commentary box. After only chatting to you a couple of weeks ago, we managed to get it in at the start, obviously what it is in your armed forces history. But before we get into all of that and I start nerding over the Royal Air Force, you've just won yourself round 2 of the Sunday GT Masters. And from your perspective, I'd imagine it was fairly sedate. However, in the background, it was all kicking off. Do you have any idea how busy it was behind, or was it just full focus forward?
Yeah, that was a pretty epic race. That was. I was pretty happy with the pace all the way through. But yeah, it was a bit of a weird one because I thought I had the pace on the guys in front of me, so I thought I'll try and make a move. Managed to get into the lead, and then I don't think I remember checking my deltas for a couple of laps. Then I remember checking them, and it was quite a big gap behind me. I think there was some carnage behind, so it'd be interesting to have a look at it.
Yeah, it's definitely a race that I think is worth watching back. It was so busy, all fighting over the last step of the podium. But tell me, the Lamborghini, if you strip it back to genetics and DNA, it's very similar to the Audi. However, in qualifying, we saw lots of Lamborghinis getting into strife, but not you. I know it's open setup. So did you go safe with the setup, aggressive with the setup, or is it just a combo that worked for you?
Yeah, so I've been working on the setup since probably about the last 2 weeks. But also added to that, this is a track I've had to learn. It's probably the only one in the calendar that I've never really raced before. So I've been building the setup and just progressively getting quicker and quicker and more comfortable with the car around here. I think the first session I did, I was in the 52s, and I thought I'm never going to get quicker than this. But yeah, perseverance.
Yeah, you just got pipped to the fastest lap of the race, I'm afraid, by Jorge Pinheiro. You managed to 1 minute 49.37, your fastest lap this evening, so a massive improvement. And we are going to have to get an RAF question in there. When are you going to get on the phone to the rest of the barracks and say, come on, get on with it? I'm sure we can get a full RAF grid here.
Yeah, so I mean, running at the same time of this, there's the Armed Forces Race Challenge, which starts next week. So that's going to be busy having 2 championships running at the same time. But the interest just seems to be growing on both fronts now. So who knows, maybe next season a few more guys will be in this as well.
Well, we've got all of that to look forward to, but I think main focus this season, of course, a final congratulations from myself and Hasse and everybody else here at Sunday GT Masters for the win and a good haul of points as well. But before we let you go, is there anybody you'd like to thank or shout out while you're live?
Yeah, just the organisers. Absolutely fantastic from joining this setup. It's really professional. And also thanks to my wife for suffering this every weekend.
Great stuff. Well, once again, a massive well done for your win this evening, and we'll see you in 2 weeks' time at Hungaroring.
Certainly will. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Chris Boland there, race winner, pro class winner, of course, as well. And Hasse, I'll leave it down to you. Cody Steiger, Martin de Jong. I've got a feeling I already know the answer. Let's
go with AM winner Cody Steeg to begin with. I'd like to bring him in. Our AM winner it is. Congrats on a very fine result this evening. And it seemed like it was one of those races that just came to you through patience and perseverance more than outright speed there in the opening stages.
Yeah, I mean, it was straight up practice. Our team put in a ton of laps this week, probably to the tune of 300-400 laps at a track that going into it, I've never raced at, practiced a couple times, but worked out in the end. A couple of us had some bad juju, if you will, but overall, we were all pretty quick, and definitely a team effort got this win.
And quite an atrocious race also. How did you see the relative carnage up front from where you were in the midfield?
Really didn't see too much. Kind of midfield was pretty good. Sandra and I were duking it out there mid-race, and he unfortunately had a self-spin going into T9, I think it was. But other than that, I had pretty smooth sailing towards the end. Had to get out of the way for a couple pro drivers that were duking it out pretty hard. But yeah, the Mercedes treated us well, and we'll take it.
And as one of the front-running AM drivers, you from time to time will find yourself fighting with the lower end of the pro field. Is that something that you think about? Will just give up the positions and fight the AMs, or are you also trying to fight for the overall positions? Of course, when it isn't too detrimental to your race and overall.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to pull over if I'm in a heated battle, but certainly something I keep my eyes on if it's a pro driver, behind me, or like today with Nick and Timothy kind of fighting at the end there. My closest competitor was 12 seconds back, so it didn't hurt me to kind of pull over, let them pass, and if they fought a little hard, got me out of the way from the carnage too. So worked out, and definitely a constant thing that you got to think about is it worth it, and risk reward,
Absolutely. Well, congrats, Cody, on a great race, on a great result in an AM class win. Well deserved indeed. Is there anyone you'd like to give a thanks or a shout out here while you're live on the stream here?
Absolutely. Our team, Apex Tech Racing, Apex Tech Racing Supply are sponsors. Base Performance Simulators, Pro Sim Rig. This week, really, Chris came through with a couple little setup tips that helped the whole team out, and just the team as a whole. Everybody put in a lot of work this week for a track that none of us really had experience at. So,
well, thanks for joining us in the booth for this chat, and we'll hope to have a chance to chat at a later stage of the season. Thanks for joining in.
Great deal. Have a good one, guys.
That was Cody Steig. Thank you very much, Hasse. Some great questions. Great to hear from himself. We've got two more drivers, but only time for one more interview. So we decide between Nicholas Kakato and Martin de Jong. Of course, I want to speak to Nicholas Kakato, second place finisher, but I want to speak to Martin de Jong as well. And I've got to say, Martin has been waiting in there a little longer. So through process of elimination, we're going to have to bring Martin de Jong in. It was all going so well. We had you pinned for a podium, and it all went undone. But I've got to say, barring all of the calamity in the latter stages of the race, you've got to say, or you can't say, you didn't enjoy yourself. That was such a fun race to watch, and I'd imagine it was even more fun to compete in.
I really enjoyed the race up until we got to the back markers. I think in the end they decided the race, and I think some things will be said about it during the upcoming weeks. But yeah, I was unlucky to get DQ'd with the final contact I had with Nicholas Kakato. But yeah, up till then it was really a fun race. Also a really hard race. I mean, I had a good start, then cold tires, understeered, so Pete could overtake me again. Yeah, and then it was really like hanging in there and keeping the beast under control.
Yeah, I'd imagine it was quite a handful, and I've got to say, you never had chance to really catch your breath, because it wasn't necessarily the same drivers the entire time, but it was all over the same position. You were all fighting over the final step on the podium, and sometimes you'd be on the attack, sometimes you'd be on the offense, and sometimes it'd be an Audi you'd be fighting, or a Ferrari, or a Lamborghini. You never really had a set time where you were fighting somebody. It was all just everything at once. So I'd imagine it's somewhat mentally but also physically exhausting after racing around here. But coming into Twin Ring Motegi, is it a circuit you liked, a circuit you hated?
Twin Ring Motegi has a special spot. I really like the flow around this track. I already was quite fast around here, I don't know, 1 or 2 seasons back when iRacing series was here. Yeah, so I really like the track, and I was really surprised on how the board handled around here with the open setup. So I was quite happy and comfortable as well. As you probably saw, had some good fights. Yeah, but in the end it just wasn't meant to be.
Yeah, I'd imagine it is rather frustrating after such a hard-fought race, but while we are on the subject of circuits, we go to Hockenheim, so we finally get in towards Europe for the middle section of the season. So for round 3, Hockenheim, a circuit, or Hungaroring, pardon me, a circuit you like, a circuit you hate, a circuit you've driven much. Tell us about it.
It'll be very short. In the bin.
Clearly,
No, I don't really like Hungaroring.
clearly not at the top
I
of
mean,
the list.
I just don't like the track. I mean, it can have a very nice flow, but with the GT3s, it's not my thing. So we'll see how I end up there with the fixed setup. But no, I preferably see that track gone. But we have to race it, and I'll see what I can do.
Well, we'll look forward to seeing you there in 2 weeks' time. But before we let you go, anybody you'd like to thank or shout out while you're live on the stream?
Big thanks to the organization, as always. Also, congratulations to Chris Boland and also Kakato. I really had a good fight with Nicholas before the pit stops. Behind me after the pit stop, chasing him. So congratulations to him. I'm really happy that he finished. And big thanks to you guys again.
Great stuff. Thank you very much, Martin. And like I say, we'll see you in 2 weeks' time at the Hungaroring.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you in 2 weeks.
Well, great to hear from our drivers, Hasse, but annoyingly, it's that time of the evening already. We have to say goodbye. Any final closing statements from yourself, or any ideas for the upcoming round?
It's quickly to say that it was a great race yet again here from the Sunday GT Masters. It was a pleasure being in the booth with you, Jack, commentating again as we did in the very first season of racing. It feels like it's back to the roots indeed. And can't wait, even though it's Hungaroring, I kind of feel like I share Martin de Jong's feelings on Hungaroring. Maybe I just need to drive it a bit more, or to do some other kind of cars there that I've done, or whatever it might be. It hasn't been my jam yet, but we'll see if it is when the Sunday GT Masters comes around next time indeed.
Yeah, well, I've got to say likewise, Hasse, it is always a pleasure to jump into the commentary box with yourself, and it's been an absolute pleasure to commentate on and commentate for all you brilliant people in the chat as well, constantly keeping us on our toes, sending over your opinions, letting us know what you were looking forward to, letting us know what battles you like to see, and letting us know who you're supporting as well. Like we say, we are heading to Hungaroring in 2 weeks' time, same place, myself and Hasse. I know you've got to put up with us again, but we will see you there. Thank you very, very much. Bye-bye.